What is the most terrifying mental illness? Insights from psychologists. Neuropsychologist here. Dementia is technically a mental illness. Some are scarier than others, IMO. Primary progressive aphasia, PPA, posterior cortical atrophy, and progressive supranuclear palsy come to mind. PPA is what Bruce Willis has. It's an earlier onset form of dementia that starts with mild language difficulties and gets worse over time. Folks in the early stages usually remain insightful, which is what makes it so scary. I had a close family member who had progressive supranuclear palsy, and it was heartbreaking and terrifying to see them go through that. The most horrifying form of dementia is most definitely Creutzfeldt-Jakob. Literally nothing you can do, and you will die in a few months at most. Then I'd probably rank frontotemporal because of early onset behavior changes, or Lewy body because of hallucinations. Go read The Family That Suddenly, NPR.org's 2006, 11-7650-3414, The Story of the Family That Couldn't Sleep, about an Italian family lineage that carried a defective gene that created a prion that would eventually destroy their hypothalamus so they'd stop sleeping. Schizophrenia, from what I've seen in the population in the ER. I've never seen something else compel someone to carry 5 dead puppies in her bra thinking she was nurturing and caring for them. I've seen people think they were Jesus and we were his followers, think they were shot in the head, think that their husband was secretly a serial killer, and think that they were being raped by sentient penises. Absolutely horrifying. Many more instances, but those were the first few to come to mind. Plus, psychosis is really hard on the mind. Brain structure and function deteriorates over time as someone continues to have episodes. There can be literal brain tissue loss. I had one psychotic episode a decade or so ago. My brain still tells me all that shit was real. It's truly horrifying stuff. About 20 years ago, I was prescribed a pretty new medication that I had a severe reaction to. It brought on psychosis that lasted for about a week until I had a moment of clarity that I was basically being poisoned and stopped taking it. I'm glad I don't remember very much of that time, but if you look back at the journal I was keeping, you can actually see my handwriting change over that brief time as I wrote about the weird stuff I was saying, doing, and believing, absolutely certain that all of it was normal. My doc didn't believe me that the drug was doing that to me, but psychosis is now recognized as a rare side effect of Lyrica. I was lucky and could end the psychosis by just stopping a medication, and cannot fathom living like that all the time. Fuck, Fexor. That stuff did terrible things to a pubescent brain. Coming off of that was a months-long literal nightmare that I actually think gave me some mild form of paranoid PTSD for basically any medicine. It worked when it worked, but it would suddenly stop and have to be upped in dosage. When I finally had enough and asked for a change, it was the worst thing I've ever had to come down off of. I still wonder if cold turkey would have been just as bad as slowly lowering dosage, but have the nightmares be over with sooner, instead of 6 months of hell. Coming off, it was the worst time of my life. Definitely changed me, and the brain zaps were horrible. I had one too, it forced me, plus a psychologist saying I had to find a psychiatrist. I'm bipolar. My delusion was that I had died and no one could tell me directly, so I had to understand it through all sorts of perceived signs. I also remember it like it was true. Really weird experience. Just FYI, having one psychotic episode doesn't have to be related to schizophrenia at all. Many things can cause that: severe bipolar disorder, drug use, etc. In February, I had bronchitis and didn't sleep at all for 10 days. The last night before I finally went to the hospital, I started remembering that the way that people are able to sleep is to locate the perfectly square white marble cube that is hidden somewhere in their room, to slice the cube into 2-inch wide slices, and then to cut the slices into shield shapes. I did not think this was new information I just discovered. I had false memories that this was the way I and everyone else had always slept. After thinking about this revelation for a few hours in the middle of the night, I started rearranging the things in my room into geometric shapes on my bed, in lieu of slicing the cube that I couldn't find, and then sat on the edge of my bed and started seeing the scene from a perspective outside my body, hovering in the air above my right shoulder. At some point I realized I needed help and went to the ER. Still really scares me when I think about it. My mom developed it when I was 10 years old, and my childhood abruptly ended. What she went through was horrifying, and there was basically no good meds for it 30 years ago, so she just ended up zonked out on benzos and in and out of the psychiatric ward. I really hope some lab somewhere is working on something to help end this suffering. Yeah, I cut contact and went into hiding before my ex-wife was diagnosed, but it's hard to really understand how horrible it is for them. My ex literally had to sleep next to someone she thought was murdering and enslaving women in the afterlife, poisoning her and working with the police to alter video and audio recordings to put her on psych holds and so much more. The world she lived in was horrible and terrifying. She had dissociative amnesia during many of the more severe episodes, and it was always scary seeing her try to rationalize and piece together things she clearly didn't remember, inventing new realities to explain why she was acting so strangely, or eventually to reject the evidence entirely. I don't know how she is now, but one of the more frightening things is many of these delusions are permanent, and there often is permanent changes in the brain due to these issues. Her father was in textbooks as an early successful treatment of severe schizophrenia, and 30 years later, he was still having hallucinations and talking on the phone to people who didn't exist. Just with the meds and a lot of therapy, he was able to not take those people seriously. I just can't imagine living your life having to constantly doubt your own reality. Something I read in a psychology textbook has always stuck with me. There is a real reason why humans are called the storytelling ape. Our propensity to invent, rationalize, or otherwise come up with stories to explain what our brain is sensing or feeling sets us apart from almost every other species, and is truly a phenomenon to behold. Scientists have done experiments with people with deteriorated corpus callosums, i.e., their connection between left brain and right brain has been severed. The two halves of these people's brains are functioning entirely independently from each other, which is apparently surprisingly doable and fine. Most people exist that way for years without knowing anything is wrong. In the experiment, they close their right eye, which is controlled by the left brain, i.e., where the reasoning and logic functions sit, and then with their left eye, they see a flash of a pictorial instruction, something like, raise your arm. The subjects follow the instruction. Then the experimenter asks the person, why did you raise your left arm? And the subject always comes up with a very quick, confident, but fully false story like, I needed to stretch, or I was trying to reach that spot on the ceiling, or my armpit was itching. The left brain, which does not know that the right brain was given the instruction, invents these reasons and fully believes it. We are the storytelling ape. We invent rationalizations and reasons and stories for everything. We can convince ourselves that the reasons we fabricate are fully and completely real. It's fucking terrifying and fascinating at the same time. Neuropsychologists believe that this mechanism is very active in schizophrenia. Neurons are misfiring in some particular way, and the patient attributes that to a story that they fabricate to explain that precise feeling or impulse generated by the misfiring neuron. It's nearly impossible to convince them that it's a lie. They fully believe in their constructed rationalization for why they felt a certain way. Do you have any positive recovery stories for people reading this thread who might have schizophrenia themselves? I have schizophrenia, diagnosed at 20, I'm 25 now, and am finally stable on a combo of 2 antipsychotics together, plus a stimulating antidepressant plus stimulant med for my negative symptoms/ADHD. It took a while and a lot of trial and error, but I'm the happiest and most stable I've been in my entire life. I've had severe psychosis with complete loss of insight and even catatonia before. So it's possible. Glad to hear you're doing well. I have ADHD and bipolar, and meds really do make such a huge difference. My sister has the same along with PTSD. I really wish she would take hers. I've been working in inpatient psych as an occupational therapy for a few years now. I've seen quite a few people who come in really unwell, and with the right medication and some stabilizing time, they get back to their normal self. Many of them are good, caring people. They're just really sick. With the right medication, sobriety, including weed and self-reflection work, you can live a full and meaningful life with schizophrenia. Easier said than done, but it is very possible. Not a doctor, but I have over 20 years' experience dealing with my own schizophrenia. Medicine has completely stopped the voices and the visual hallucinations. I still can't work, but I do have a wife and kid. We're a very close family filled with lots of love. Glad to hear you're doing well now. I can only imagine the amount of effort it took to get where you are. You should be proud. No longer work in the field, but did case management for people with serious mental illnesses. Saw tons of people doing well for many years on end, before, during, and after the time I worked with them. One story that always stuck out to me was one person who believed plants spoke to them. They got supported employment and eventually settled in working at a flower shop. Still had the experience, but it was much more manageable. Plants wouldn't say anything distressful, and was in a setting that worked well for them. That is strangely the most cutest, most lovely thing I've ever heard. I am happy the flowers didn't say distressing things. I feel like of all the voices you could hear, plants are by far the least bad option. I hope they had a happy life working at the flower shop. Medication. I'm an EMT and firefighter. The constant thing almost everyone having a break says is something along the lines of, "The meds make me feel bad. I don't need meds. I'm not sick." They do need meds. They are sick. It's not their fault. To be fair, the people who are doing okay with it don't end up in the ER often, and the ER nurses don't generally know the eventual outcome if people start treatment. My brother has Korsakoff syndrome, a severe form of dementia caused by extreme alcohol abuse. When I try to explain it to people, I usually compare it to the movie 50 First Dates because it's something most people can relate to. But honestly, that's only enough to give someone a rough idea. The reality is much more complicated. His short-term memory is essentially destroyed. More than 25% of the time, he wakes up with no memory of the previous day. Even when he does remember, he often can't retain more than about half of what happens over the next 10 minutes. Within a couple of hours, he'll lose even more. Imagine trying to function when your brain can't reliably store new experiences. One of the defining characteristics of Korsakoff syndrome is confabulation. When there are gaps in memory, the brain fills them in by creating false memories that feel completely real. He isn't lying or making things up on purpose. His brain is literally rewriting reality, and he has complete confidence in those fabricated memories. As difficult as that is by itself, it isn't the whole story. He's also diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type, which brings severe manic episodes and schizophrenic delusions. Some of the stories would almost be funny if they weren't so heartbreaking. He's believed he was on a hospital hockey team with Baker Mayfield. He's been convinced Elon Musk is after him because he supposedly created an AI that's years ahead of Grok, and there are kill squads trying to eliminate him. In the same storyline, he's convinced someone released his AI onto the internet and that it will eventually take over the world. Any one of these diagnoses would be life-altering on its own. Korsakoff syndrome is devastating. Schizoaffective disorder is devastating. Severe bipolar disorder is devastating. The problem is they don't simply coexist. They feed each other. The memory loss means he can't remember conversations, explanations, or corrections. The confabulation fills those missing memories with stories that feel absolutely real. The bipolar mania amplifies those beliefs with complete certainty, and the schizophrenic delusions push them even further from reality. Each disorder makes the others harder to treat, harder to manage, and harder to distinguish. The result is someone living in a reality that no one else can access. He often won't take medication because he doesn't believe anything is wrong. Even when he wants to, he can't reliably remember to take it. He doesn't trust people whose version of reality conflicts with the one his own brain has created. Trying to reason with him is often impossible because every symptom reinforces the others. People often think of mental illnesses as individual diagnoses. What I've learned is that stacking several severe neurological and psychiatric disorders together doesn't create an additive problem. It creates an exponential one. Each condition magnifies the others until the person you're trying to help is living in a world that is almost impossible for the rest of us to comprehend. The stories I could tell from the past 2 years are nearly unfathomable. The stress, fear, and emotional exhaustion they've caused have been every bit as overwhelming.